Welcome back, Shred Gang. Today's topic, chords. Pretty boring, right? Let's work on some shredding instead. I know you and I were always drawn to the fast and crazy stuff. That's probably why you're watching this channel. But in all seriousness, if you never learn about the most interesting and awesome sounding chords out there, your songwriting and arranging skills will probably be stuck at this level forever. In case you missed it, I posted a really cool 10 levels of modern guitar riffs video recently. In that one I worked with this exact basic cadence and made it more interesting and more challenging, take after take. And today I want to reveal the most important secrets behind this process. These extremely powerful chord tricks will make it possible for you to sound like a professional player instantly, and your songs, arrangements, riffs and chords will never be the same again. After watching today's tutorial until the end so that you get the most out of these tricks, you should head over to patreon.com/Bernd to get the brand new full modern chord package I made for you if you're serious about expanding your creative repertoire as fast as possible. But first, let's work on the very important foundation. Let's do this. Let's stick with the really boring example cadence that I used in the 10 levels video. So this one, unsurprisingly, is in the key of E major, and I'm playing the chords on the 1st, 4th and 5th scale degree. That's pretty much as boring as it gets, right? Especially in rock and metal music, guitarists really dislike the sound of major chords or composing in major keys in general, exactly because they have this kind of boring, bland, happy sound in mind. But if you feel the same way about major chords, you're really missing out, and here's why. Of course, the major scale itself isn't exactly the most exciting foundation for your music, we can agree on that. But what happens when we add the most dissonant interval ever in there by just changing one note in the major scale? If we just raise the 4th note a semitone, we suddenly have a tritone here. Pretty much as dissonant and suspenseful as it gets. This new sequence of notes is actually my favorite major mode, Lydian. I like to see the Lydian scale as a slight variation of the major scale, since you just have to change this one note, but that's enough music theory for today. How can you actually practically apply all of this to get better, more interesting sounding chords? The simple answer and secret behind some of my all-time favorite chord voicings, I really just add this exact Lydian interval to my major chords to make them sound amazing. In the context of chord tensions, those Lydian chords are called sharp 11 chords. That might look a bit intimidating right now, but trust me, it's not that hard. Here's a basic taste of how they sound like. That sounds pretty awesome, right? Let's dissect it chord by chord and finally check out some awesome voicings. So first I played an E major 9 sharp 11 voicing. This one is really interesting because aside from the root and major 3rd, I'm playing the major 7th, the 9th and the sharp 11th. A completely different story than just playing E major like that, right? By the way, I highly recommend getting the tabs and Git profiles for all of the following chords and a huge and really awesome library of my all-time favorite voicings with the modern chord package I made for all members on Patreon. So make sure to join our awesome community of over 4,000 players today. Up next I was playing an A major 7 sharp 11 chord. We have the root, major 3rd, major 7th and sharp 11th in there, and this one is a bit more simple than the previous one, so if you're just getting into advanced chords, this one is a great one to start out with. But it still sounds great and pretty suspenseful and much more interesting than the typical A major voicings. A really helpful tip with this one. Of course, you can also play the root on the low E string instead of the open A string, and that way you can simply move it around to get different major 7 sharp 11th voicings. That's pretty cool, right? Up next, I took a bit of a risk. This one might not be for everybody. So in there we have the root, major third, major 6th and sharp 11th. So the main difference with that one is that you can clearly hear that major 6th in there in addition to the sharp 11. So some really interesting intervals in there. But if you know me and my music, which you can and should check out if you're a fan of the channel, for example on Spotify, you know that I really love and recommend experimenting with those sounds. They can instantly make a cadence or riff that you're not quite happy with much more interesting. And here's the last voicing I want to show you for today, before we get to the even more important chord trick I want to show you. This one is a really cool and quite easy to remember variation of the major 7 sharp 11 sound. So I used this one instead of the regular kind of boring E major chord. And once again you have the root, major 3rd, major 7th and sharp 11th in there. And that's another one I can really recommend because it's just easy to remember and move around all across the fretboard. And here's the final trick and secret why the last levels of my recent 10 levels of modern guitar riffs video sounded so cool. Usually I like to think in a specific key or scale when I'm composing entire cadences. So I'm only using the chords of E harmonic minor or of B melodic minor and so on, just to work in an established harmonic context with my music. But this time I experimented with the concept of thinking in a completely different Lydian key for every single chord change. Allow me to explain. So instead of just checking out the chords in the key of E Lydian and only building the cadence with those chords, which is always the kind of safest and easiest option, I was seeing each chord change as the beginning of a new Lydian key. So when I added scale runs or arpeggios in between those chords, I wasn't just thinking in E Lydian, I was starting out with E Lydian, but then moved to A Lydian, B Lydian and back to E Lydian. That little songwriting and arrangement secret works surprisingly well, and it's also a cool intellectual challenge, because you have to think in different Lydian shapes and scales quickly as the chords are changing, and especially when you're improvising over material like this. So make sure to try these chord tricks in your next songwriting, arrangement or riffing session. I'm quite sure that they will help you with finding more interesting and unique ideas. Also make sure to get the full modern chord package on Patreon right now to continue expanding your personal chord library. And leave a like in case you enjoyed this episode, that really means a lot to me. We're not done yet. One last thing. I'd also like to share another random German word with you today. Nachricht. That means message. Make sure to comment that one down below to confuse our new watchers or everybody who's not watching these videos until the end. How dare you? I will hopefully see you again very soon. Have an awesome day and tons of fun practicing.